YouTube can throttle us.
They can suppress us.
But they can't stop a text message.
Don Lemon thought he could storm a Minnesota church with anti-ICE rioters and face zero consequences. Well, he was dead wrong. The Trump DOJ just dropped the hammer with a superseding indictment, arresting 25 more defendants in a massive federal sweep. And now Lemon's facing something that should terrify every leftist activist. It's not just about one disgraced CNN host anymore. This is about whether houses of worship remain sacred in America, or whether radical leftists can terrorize churchgoers with impunity. Attorney General Pam Bondi made it crystal clear, quote, "You cannot attack a house of worship." But the implications go deeper. Every sanctuary city mayor, every Antifa organizer, every celebrity activist who thought they were untouchable under Biden is now watching their phones, wondering if they're next. You see, the Trump DOJ isn't just prosecuting crimes, they're sending a message that will echo through every liberal newsroom and activist organization in America. Speaking of national security priorities, there is something every American needs to understand about our strategic vulnerabilities. This news broke early this year. I'm talking about when the U.S. Department of Energy announced $2.7 billion in contracts to restore domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. Now, my friends, this is not just government spending. This is a clear declaration of intent. Why? Well, because America needs uranium. It needs domestic uranium, and it needs it right now. Not yesterday, it needs it now. Now, the U.S., if you didn't know this, consumes 56 million pounds of uranium annually. Yet we import 80 to 90% from foreign sources, including Russia and Kazakhstan. You know what that is? That's called a national security nightmare. While the DOJ is prosecuting domestic threats like that Minnesota church rioter, we're simultaneously dependent on hostile nations for our nuclear fuel. Atomic Minerals, trading as ATMMF in the U.S. and ATOM in Canada, is positioned at the center of this uranium renaissance. Their strategic uranium assets could help end America's dangerous foreign dependence. As Trump's DOJ restores law and order domestically, shouldn't we also secure our energy independence? The time for half measures is over, because true security means protecting America from threats both foreign and domestic. So make sure you go and check out the full briefing that has been prepared just for you. You'll find it linked right below this video. We thank Atomic Minerals for supporting our work. But here's the twist that is Don Lemon's legal team freaking out. Sources close to the case say the superseding indictment doesn't just add more defendants, it adds more serious charges. Federal conspiracy charges, civil rights violations, and now a Minnesota churchgoer is suing Lemon personally for emotional distress. The man who spent years lecturing America about justice is about to get a master class in actual accountability. DOJ arresting, you see the headline here, 25 more in the Minnesota church riot. Don Lemon getting sued. New York Post dropping the news. Don Lemon sued by a parishioner over Minnesota church takeover during the anti-ICE protest. Diving deeper into the New York Post, Don Lemon sued by parishioner. Oh yes, he did plead not guilty in Minnesota. I will not be intimidated. A churchgoer has slapped lefty activist news commentator Don Lemon with a civil suit for his alleged involvement in an anti-ICE mob that stormed a Minnesota church last month. Lemon, 59, was arrested in Los Angeles for his role in the January 18th takeover of City's Church in St. Paul, which he joined with a few dozen local Black Lives Matter activists under the guise of acting in his capacity as a journalist. In the suit, Ann Doucette claims the protesters storming the parish, which happened during a Sunday service packed with families, left her with severe emotional distress, fear, anxiety, and trauma, and that the rowdy agitators deprived her of her right to freely practice her faith. The suit was obtained by TMZ, also names Lemon's fellow protesters accused of interrupting the service. The ousted CNN reporter allegedly linked up with demonstrator who provided logistics and local contacts in support of the operation. But who can forget, right? Who can forget? What did Don Lemon do on the grounds of that church? He gave those protesters, the ones that started the riot at the church, he gave them sustenance. He gave them donuts and coffee. He supported their efforts. And that might be the silver bullet here. That might be what breaks this whole thing, because he was helping them. He was supporting them. The breaking news has two major angles: the civil suit against Lemon and the federal crackdown. So let's dive into the DOJ's response. The feds arrest 25 more anti-ICE agitators in the Minnesota church invasion. 5 others being sought. Attorney General Pam Bondi making the announcement. Today, the Justice Department unsealed an indictment charging 30 more people who took part in the attack on the city's church in Minnesota. In my direction, federal agents have already arrested 25 of them, with more to come throughout the day. You cannot attack a house of worship. If you do so, you cannot hide from us. We will find you, we will arrest you, and we will prosecute you. This Department of Justice stands for Christians and all Americans of faith, and it is about time. So the feds are moving fast with these arrests, but we're getting conflicting numbers from different sources. The Trump DOJ indicting 9 more leftist rioters who stormed and terrorized a Minnesota church, along with Don Lemon. That's according to Eric Doherty.
DOJ has put together a superseding indictment modifying this case. MS Now Legal Affairs reporter Fallon Gallagher is here with us. What are the details, Fallon?
Yeah, Anna, we have very few details at this point because this indictment remains under seal, but we know that the DOJ has to return a new superseding indictment in the case involving Don Lemon because the DOJ filed a motion asking the judge to unseal that. So we have yet to see the contents of this indictment, so we can't speak specifically to how it's changed yet, but we have a few hints. We can see online that the docket has changed, the case name has changed from U.S. v. Levy Armstrong, of course, that first co-defendant in the case, to U.S. v. Sealed. And so that implies that there may be a number of new co-defendants who have been arrested in connection to that church protest who are added to this case. We don't know if the charges have changed, but we would imagine that this case should be unsealed very soon. What's interesting here is that our affiliate CARE in Minneapolis is reporting that 9 new people have been arrested in connection to that church protest. So it could be that they're adding those 9 new defendants to this case. But at this point, we don't know. What's really notable here, though, is that this new superseding indictment comes after the judge denied the government's request to make this a complex case because there were so many co-defendants. There are 9 original defendants in this case. So if they add 9 new additional defendants, that makes this very thorny.
Okay, you'll keep us posted. Thank you for bringing us that breaking.
Of course, Pam Bondi is saying 25 is the number. Now we're seeing the personal impact on the churchgoers through the chaos. They're fighting back in court. Don Lemon is being sued by a Minnesota churchgoer for causing emotional distress after he stormed and interrupted a church service with anti-ICE protesters. Here is Don Lemon's mugshot. Yeah, not smiling there, buddy. Yeah, don't drop the soap there, but, well, you might enjoy that moment. Bondi's making this signature case. Tough talk, but the arrest numbers keep shifting. Pam Bondi just announced the DOJ had indicted 30 in a sweep this morning. 25 were scooped up into custody. You cannot attack a house of worship.
The beginning of what's going to happen here. When you violate people's due process, when you pull people off the street and you start dragging them and hurting them and not abiding by the Constitution, when you start doing all of that, people get upset and angry. And if you remember what the Civil Rights Movement was about, the Civil Rights Movement was about these very kinds of protests. There's nothing in the Constitution that tells you what time you can protest. You can protest at any time. That's the whole point of it, is to disrupt, it's to make uncomfortable. And that's what they're doing. And that's what I believe when I say everyone has to be willing to sacrifice something. You have to make people uncomfortable in these times. If you see how uncomfortable people uncomfortably...
Don Lemon's own words going to come back to bite him. The DOJ is clearly sending a message with these ongoing arrests. treating them as domestic terrorism against religious freedom. Nick Sortor reports that 9 additional Minnesota anti-ICE church rioters just been arrested by the DOJ, according to KARE 11. Trump DOJ has not forgotten about this case. Examples must be made out of all these people. Anyone terrorizing churchgoers belongs to rot in federal prison. So Don Lemon's getting sued. You see, that's the beautiful irony nobody's talking about. Don Lemon built his entire career demonizing Trump supporters as threats to democracy. Okay? He called us extremists, insurrectionists, dangers to civil society, yet when the cameras were rolling and the moment mattered, who actually stormed a house of worship? Who actually terrorized innocent Americans trying to pray? This guy. The Trump DOJ isn't playing games. 25 arrests in one morning, a superseding indictment with sealed defendants, AG Pam Bondi declaring war on anyone who attacks houses of worship. This is what justice looks like when you have leaders with actual backbone. Don Lemon thought his media celebrity would protect him. He thought his leftist activism was noble. Well, he was wrong on both counts, and now he's facing federal charges and civil lawsuits while real Americans cheer. You think Don Lemon deserves everything that's coming to him? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to check out the Next News merch shop for gear that celebrates America's comeback.
The system controls information. Information control is power. They don't want you to see this. The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.